This is the Brave New Coin Crypto Conversation, hosted by Andy Pickering.
Hi everyone, Andy Pickering here. I'm your host and welcome to the Crypto Conversation, a Brave New Coin podcast where we talk to the people building the future in the Bitcoin, blockchain and cryptocurrency space. My guest today is Jed McCaleb. Jed is the co-founder and chief architect of the Stella Development Foundation, an open network working to connect the world's financial infrastructure. And back in 2014, Jed, of course, created Stella, an open source blockchain network. And the Stella blockchain network is designed to democratize economic participation by making money more fluid, markets more open, and people more empowered. Hey, welcome to the show, Jed.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I'm excited to talk to you, Jed, because your history is very much the history of crypto itself in many ways. And you were an early pioneer of decentralized systems. You created eDonkey 2000, one of the big early file sharing networks. And of course, you created Mt. Gox, the first Bitcoin exchange. You were the co-founder of Ripple. And now, of course, you're leading the way at the Stella Development Foundation. And look, today, we're going to talk all about Stella and the upcoming Stella Meridian Conference. But just before we do that, it'd be nice to just touch on some of your history. As I say, it is the history of crypto. So, let's start at the beginning. I'd love to hear, when did you first start messing around with computers, and when did you begin to get interested in peer-to-peer decentralized networks?
Yeah, sure. So I got into computers and programming fairly early. I think I was in third grade. That's when I realized that it was possible to make games on computers. And so I got super interested and just tried to borrow computers from friends and from school or whatever to start to program. And eventually got my own computer probably in fifth grade and have been programming ever since. I got in, I've always kind of been interested in, networks and ways to kind of decentralized collections of power, essentially, which was what kind of drew me into peer-to-peer stuff in the first place. It just seemed super powerful to kind of disintermediate the recording industries and these movie studios and just be able to kind of put out stuff directly to people, and that was super exciting to me. And so got involved in peer-to-peer stuff. And it was kind of, obviously that a big part of that ethos is in the crypto community as well. So after eDonkey kind of wound down, I was looking around for other stuff to do and stumbled upon Bitcoin in 2010 and got super excited about it and still am today. So that's kind of the early history anyway.
Yeah, and so 2010, you, I guess, discovered Bitcoin or came across Bitcoin, and look, that's obviously early by any crypto OG standards. But I'm interested. What did you think when you first came across Bitcoin? And look, I'm sure you read the white paper. And what were your impressions?
Well, I was super excited about it. I mean, previously, I didn't think, I kind of dreamed of some kind of system like that before, but didn't really think it was possible, that you could have a financial system or some sort of store of value that didn't require a central party. And so the fact that they had kind of worked out, or especially had worked out how to make that possible, was super exciting to me. And it just seemed at that point, the whole thing was very nascent, and it just seemed kind of this is just sort of a weird internet thing, and it was very unclear whether it would go anywhere. And if it did, it just seemed like it was going to take, decades or something like that. But the progress with it was amazingly quick. There was way more people out there in the world, kind of appreciated the same aspects about it that I did. And that the early people did as well. I was kind of surprised by that, and just how much momentum it gained over the years was pretty surprising. So it was just exciting to watch it go from, a few thousand people to what it is today, in pretty short order. So it's been pretty exciting.
Very much so. And I guess that you were so, excited by maybe the potential of Bitcoin, even in those very, very early days that, this is July 2010 when, it was very difficult to get your hands on Bitcoin. Really, the only way to do so was to mine it yourself. And so I think that's the reason why you actually decided to effectively set up the very first Bitcoin exchange, right?
Yeah. I wanted to buy Bitcoin. The ways of doing it, you either had to like work it out with someone on the forum. It was just very clear that they needed an exchange. And I also just wanted to kind of learn the system. So it's like a good way to just kind of get involved and like build something that it was clear that was needed. And also allowed me to buy Bitcoin as well, which was nice. And then other people as well. So uh, so I did that. I mean, I didn't run that very long before like handing it over to Mark, the guy that eventually you know did what he did with it. But
Correct.
yeah, it was a pretty exciting project.
Yeah, look, and obviously the Mount Gox story is just a big rabbit hole of a story in itself. We won't go too far down that rabbit hole now. But so after, look, so you discovered Bitcoin, you started Mount Gox, and then obviously handed that on, and then that story played out. And then in the meantime, I guess presumably still inspired by the potential of blockchains and their ability to disrupt the financial system. You were an early co-founder of Ripple, right? So what was your I guess intention, or what was the early vision there? Because it's very much a similar vision to Stella, but just before we get to that, Stella, I guess Ripple is part of the story, right?
Sure. Yeah. So I mean, like I said, like I think Bitcoin's this awesome idea, but software is very iterative, and I think it builds upon other things that you've seen and other things that people have done before. And one of the things that's always kind of bothered me about Bitcoin is just this mining aspect, because like today there's like literally billions of dollars spent on mining, and it just seems sort of like a shame, right? If there's another way to do it, then another way to solve the consensus problem, then that would be more ideal, right? So Ripple, and to a large degree Stellar as well, is an attempt to kind of solve that, right? To come up with a different way to do consensus where it doesn't require this mining process, so it can be done in like a much more efficient way. So you don't have to spend billions of dollars securing the network, and it can just work. And then along those lines, I also kind of came to the conclusion, like as I kind of understood how money moved more around the world, because having to do it for Mt. Gox and just like learning more about Bitcoin and just like payment systems in general, you kind of realize that it's very much pre-internet and pretty broken. And so Ripple, and then to a larger degree Stellar, is an attempt to kind of fix all of that, right? Where it's definitely inspired by Bitcoin, and it's the same kind of general idea where you have this payment network that doesn't have a central authority, but it's much more tailored for how you fix the existing financial network, rather than just this new token that people can use, right? Where Bitcoin is essentially like like a digital gold, whereas something like Ripple or Stellar, it has kind of a different niche.
Yes, indeed. And okay, well, just to close the door on Ripple then. So you were a co-founder of Ripple, and you were there at the beginning for a number of years, and then it's another rabbit hole in itself, and we won't go down it. But effectively, that relationship that you had with some of the other people at Ripple, that went bad, and there were long drawn out court cases, and I suppose that's all been resolved now, and you walked away with a large amount of XRP, some of which you still have, and I'm sure some that you're allowed to sell that over a period of time. But I guess only question now is, what is your relationship like with Ripple today, or have you just parted ways and you're happy to ignore each other, or what's the skinny?
So there's not much relationship there. I mean, they're just kind of doing their thing, and I'm doing my thing. I mean, there's everything's pretty much resolved now. We're just kind of, going our own ways essentially. So, yeah, I mean, I don't really harbor any like hard feelings to them, but it's what it is. Like sometimes these things just don't work out. So.
And I did think it was fascinating, though, that I think at the the height of the end of 2017, or when the early January 2018 altcoin boom, because of your XRP holdings, you were something like, the New York Times at least says you were very briefly the 40th most wealthiest person in the world on paper, or on digital holdings, right?
Maybe something like that. Yeah, I mean, it got pretty ridiculous for a bit there. I mean, it doesn't. that's one of the things that you learn about in crypto is that really defies the efficient market hypothesis. Like a lot of stuff just doesn't make sense. So
Indeed. All right. Well, look, let's talk Stella then. So, as I said, I think most people know that Stella is in some ways broadly similar to Ripple in terms of both, design, vision, certainly in the early days code, but I know that has changed now. But look, so pick up the story. What's the origin story of Stella?
yeah, so I mean, I guess the idea behind Stellar is that, like I said, like once you start like digging into how money moves around the planet, you realize that it's very much pre-internet, where it's still there's all these different networks and all these different payment systems, in different currencies, and none of it really interoperates, right? And kind of the beauty of the internet is like, like for instance with email, like it doesn't matter who's running your email server, whether it's university or your company or you just at your home doing it, they all like kind of speak the same language. So you can seamlessly and instantly send messages to anyone in the world, right? And so there's really no reason that money shouldn't work the same way. Like it shouldn't matter if you hold one currency and you're at your bank and somebody else, you want to send somebody a different currency and at their mobile money thing, all these things should just kind of work seamlessly together. And Stellar's a way to do that, right? It's the way to kind of like make this interoperable protocol between all these different payment networks, right? And so the way it does it is it basically can represent any kind of value inside the network. It's very similar to this kind of stable coin thing that's happening now in the wider crypto world, as people have realized it's actually pretty useful to have tokens inside these networks that are denominated in not the native thing, not denominated in like Bitcoin or Ethereum or whatever, but denominated in dollars or euros or yen or what have you, right? And so that's the whole concept behind Stellar, is that it's useful to have these tokens, and if you make these, then you can kind of make this interoperable payment network.
Yeah, Jed, and one of the things that's been interesting this year, with the rise of the Ethereum's DeFi ecosystem and DEXs and stable coins and atomic swaps and all this stuff, very much now at the forefront of the crypto conversation. But this was kind of the design of Stella right from the early days, really. But I think part of that story has kind of been missed. But you've really been talking about all this for some time, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we've been singing this song for a long time now. So it's cool to see that it's actually starting to take hold, and like people are starting to get it, and it's becoming useful in the wider world. I mean, I think this has been our thesis all along, is that I think for crypto to be adopted widely, like you need this bridge from the existing forms of payment that people use from existing currencies, right? So like it's hard to get people to jump straight to something like Bitcoin when that's not what they're used to. When you go to the grocery store, you don't pay in Bitcoin, you pay in dollars or whatever your local currency is, right? And so there needs to be some way to like have a digital dollar or have a digital peso or whatever, and be able to use that in some network like Bitcoin or some one of these decentralized networks. And once you have that, then you can kind of get more and more adoption to this decentralized system, and then you can start using the internal native tokens, right? And so that's kind of been our thesis from the beginning. So it seems like that's what's kind of starting to play out, which is exciting.
Yes, and you said earlier, Jed, that one of the things that I guess frustrates you with Bitcoin is this, the very energy intensive mining process. And so I think, without getting too technical, it'd be worth just understanding the consensus protocol that Stella uses, and how that is different from proof of work or proof of stake. And so I'd be interested to hear your sort of high level summary of that, and why you think it's a superior consensus.
Sure. Yeah. So I mean, basically, it works a lot like the consensus algorithms they had pre-Bitcoin. Things like PBFT and Raft and things like this. So, but it works like Bitcoin. It works in a federated setting, meaning that like anyone can set up a Stellar validator, and the other validators don't even have to know that you've done that. They can know that validators can come and go. So like the old consensus algorithms that were just message passing, the way Stellar is, people have to know the complete set of validators. So it's a problem to remove them, or everybody has to agree on what the set is, and that's kind of an issue. So the Stellar consensus protocol kind of gets around that and makes it where it's essentially voting, but it's voting amongst people that you that you choose to listen to out there in the world, right? So you set up a Stellar validator, you listen to like some number of other validators, and you kind of say like, hey, I'll agree to this value as long as like some number of these other people also agree to it. And then they're saying similar statements. And what the paper proves is that if there's a sufficient overlap between these people, what we call like a transitive quorum throughout the whole network, then the whole network will converge to one value. And so, I would say it's just different than proof of work. It's not, it's better in a lot of aspects, but there are some aspects where I think proof of work is probably better. So there's just trade-offs between them, right? So like, obviously it's way less resource intensive to use Stellar consensus protocol. I mean, one of the downsides is you do have to maintain this list of nodes that you trust out there in the world. In practice, I think that's not that big of a deal. People kind of do this anyway, and especially in the model that Stellar has where you're using these assets, right? Like, so like if you're using dollars issued by some financial institution, then and that's the main thing you're holding, then yeah, you should trust that institution's validators, because if that institution is not going to honor your dollars, or it's going to cheat with the validators, and it's probably not going to honor your dollars anyway. So you're already trusting them, right? So these kind of trust relationships can just be made explicit in the network, and that just makes the whole thing much more efficient than something like proof of work. So that's kind of it at a high level. But yeah, obviously there's like, more details, and like we've shown that this actually works. I think we have like a formal like a proof of it, not like a computational proof of it. So.
Yeah, and so I think what you're saying is, using Stella, the process of sending a transaction, it is much faster, probably cheaper, and certainly much more energy efficient than a proof of work blockchain. But am I right in saying that it wouldn't be seen as quite as decentralized or as secure as something like Bitcoin? But that's not necessarily the point with what you're trying to achieve, right?
Oh, I definitely think it's as secure, and I don't know, I would maybe even argue the decentralized point. It's just a different trade-off. Like with it needs less maintenance. Like Bitcoin needs less maintenance, right? Like you can just set up a Bitcoin miner, and then you don't have to worry about other miners out there in the world, or try to figure out which ones you should put in your list or whatever. I mean, but the downside is like, mining is pretty centralized, so you actually are trusting these people in the same way that you're trusting validators. You just don't get to choose them, where you do get to choose them in the Stellar world. And also in this model where you have other assets in the network, for instance, like, imagine, Ethereum's on proof of work. Imagine some of these stable coins that are on Ethereum their value starts to be more than Ethereum itself. Then the proof of work starts to break down, because what you're securing is with proof of work is the whole network, but the value that's securing it is just the Ethereum value rather than the value of all the stable coins. So proof of work kind of breaks down in this model with when you have other kinds of value other than the native token in the network. So that's why Stellar addresses it with this trust model. That's a bit different.
Sure, and I think, Jed, a really simple way to understand this, and I've seen you talk about this, or maybe it's on your website somewhere, but I think this kind of gets to the crux of the issue when you say that from the beginning, Stellar has always been designed to be cryptocurrency adjacent, but the purpose of the Stellar blockchain has always been intended to enhance rather than undermine or replace the existing financial system. Is that a fair summary? And put that in context.
Yeah, so I mean, it's definitely designed as sort of an upgrade for the existing financial infrastructure. I mean, I think it'll be a long time before, or if ever, that everyone is using one cryptocurrency out there in the world to do all their transactions. I mean, I think that's a pretty hard transition for people to make. So I think the like I was saying, like the better route is just to do something that enables what's already the existing stuff to like just work better and work better for people, make transactions cheaper for people, just reduce friction in the system, allow people to like interact with people they weren't able to interact with before. And that's kind of Stellar's mission.
Yeah, and look, well, I'm interested in your thoughts here then, Jed, because we're sort of, the idea with crypto is to either build this new financial system or, enhance the current financial system and kind of integrate within it. But you alluded to this before when we were talking about, the January 2018 altcoin boom, and that some things in crypto don't make sense, and that, these token valuations were probably fair to say stupendously overvalued at the time when considering kind of real world usage. So what I'm saying is, where are we at in terms of that journey on crypto in terms of real world use cases and adoption, and is this journey is it happening slower or faster than you anticipated? Where do you see that we're at now as we close out 2020?
Yeah, I mean, I still think that we're really early in the journey for people actually using these things and using this technology. I mean, obviously there's a lot of hype around it, and there's a lot of people that know about it and are interested in it, which is great. And I think that's probably the first step to getting it more actually used by people. But if you look at like, how many people are using these things, it's still very low, and actually using them for anything other than like trading or speculation, which I mean, I think those things are fine, but I mean, ultimately those are just in anticipation of people actually using it for real things. So if the real things don't ever materialize, then that stuff will dry up. So there is some use of it. I mean, people do use Bitcoin to move money around the world. They do use Stella to move money around the world, but it is very nascent. And I think one of the things that we're very focused on at SDF is just making these tools or making applications that will get this stuff more widely adopted. Like, I mean, we're working on this mobile money app right now that's basically for dollar savings, and really you can use it without even knowing that crypto is involved, right? I think stuff like that is super important, where most people don't, they're not enamored by the technology. They just want something that's going to make their life better, but one way or another, like allow them to send money to people they couldn't send before, or allow them to like protect their money from inflation, or like some other aspect that helps them directly, rather than just interest in the technology. And just, most people aren't just like enamored by the vision, which makes sense, right? So until these things actually start to get used by people, I'm a little worried that I'm a little worried about the future until that starts to happen, I guess. So.
Okay, well, give us a couple of real world examples then, Jed, that you see being used right now, or just starting to get some early traction, I guess, from maybe something on a kind of, an individual level, just a normal person, could be anywhere in the world, you choose, and then maybe some like business or company or enterprise use cases.
Sure. Yeah. So yeah, like I mentioned, we're making this mobile app called Vibrant, and the idea is that it's for dollar savings in places like Argentina, or other places in the world that have really high inflation. And so the idea is that somebody in Argentina can download Vibrant, they can connect it to their bank account, they can load Vibrant up with pesos and then swap those into dollars, right? And so it is essentially like a mini bank account for them that can be denominated in dollars, which is not really possible for the vast majority of Argentinians. And everybody wants this, right? And it definitely improves their livelihood, because now they can kind of, because right now people like take dollars and store them in their mattress, or just suffer the fact that their pesos get devalued, right? And so this allows them a way around that, which I think is super important. So that's just kind of getting started right now. We're doing the initial, like, it's in beta, and we're kind of like refining like how that whole thing works, but people are starting to use it. It's pretty exciting. The other kind of real world thing that we're excited about, and people are starting to use Stellar for, is moving money in and out of Nigeria. So there's this company Cowrie that's based in Nigeria, and essentially they allow businesses, Nigerian businesses that need to like buy goods from overseas, just send money cross border. So the business can give them naira in Nigeria, then Cowrie can give the supplier that they're trying to buy goods from, either pounds or dollars or what have you, and then the Nigerian business can get the money. Because like moving money in and out of Nigeria, it's like, there's two exchange rates essentially that are pretty far apart. the official government rate and then what the rate you can actually get in the country is, and just there's a lot of like currency restrictions in general. So it's just very hard to move money around in and out of Nigeria. So this is an awesome solution for them, and that's been growing. That's been out for a while, and it's been growing pretty rapidly. So we're pretty excited about that. So.
Very nice, very nice. Okay, well, Jed, let's just touch on the Stella native digital currency token, the Lumen XLM. So, of course, every blockchain network has its own native token. So, Lumen, what's the use case for Lumen? So Lumen is really just, as I understand it, it's required in very small amounts for kind of initializing accounts and making transactions, and you do that just to add a tiny bit of friction to make the transactions go through and effectively stop bad actors or spam attacks and that kind of thing on the network, right?
Yeah, so but basically, since it is this public network, right, you need some way to prevent people from sending like a billion transactions or something like that, just to DOS the network. And so the transaction fee serves that purpose. So like for everyday people that are just sending, normal amounts of transactions, it's not a burden. It's just like, it's sub-cent, it's like not even really noticeable. But if you're trying to abuse the network, then it becomes expensive, right? And so you need that in a system like Stella that is public. So there's no real other way to stop like DOS attacks. So that's one of its uses. I mean, the other use, like for instance, in this moving money in and out of Nigeria, like I was mentioning before, it serves as sort of a bridge currency between these different other currencies in the world. So rather than have like a different exchange between naira and dollars and naira and euro and naira and pounds and naira and whatever, you can just have an exchange between naira and lumens, and then you can have an exchange from lumens to whatever other currency. So it allows you to like have a much more liquid markets, because you can just have each currency can have one market to lumens rather than have in markets to every other currency in the world, right? So it just makes the whole thing scale much better, and create like your liquidity isn't split between every different currency in the world. It's just this one kind of market that can be kind of good. So that's another important use of it. And then ultimately, like, it is easier to send lumens around than these other tokens. So like ultimately, I think people will kind of start to migrate to that as there's more and more people in the network. So.
And if that's the case, then as a network token, do you see the token as being designed to appreciate and value over time? Is that what it's supposed to do? Is it supposed to be an investable asset in the way that, say, Bitcoin is?
I mean, it's I don't know what will happen with it. I mean, it's not really designed to do that. I mean, I think, with all of these things, as more people use them, there's more demand. So, yeah, maybe the price will go up. I mean, that's not really the intent of it. I mean, like, we needed the network to prevent DOS attacks. It's also useful to facilitate trade. So these things make it where it's useful. There's a limited supply of it. So, it's hard to know what the price will do, but yeah, it's more like it's there because of its utility, I would say.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Okay, well, let's touch on the Stella Development Foundation. I think that's where you probably spend your day to day. And so just talk me through I guess the relationships and the ecosystem. SDF, I think you called it. So that's a non-profit, right? What's the goal?
Yeah, so we set up Stella Development Foundation, SDF, to sort of like shepherd and make sure development continues on the Stellar network. You can kind of think of it like Linux Foundation is for Linux, right? I mean, there's Linux is also this open source project that lots of people contribute to and is important for lots of things out there in the world. But there's this kind of nonprofit foundation that makes sure it continues to be developed and promotes it and things like that, right? And so SDF has a similar function for the Stellar network. We don't own the network. We don't run the majority of validators. Like, we could go away and the network would keep going, but we do perform this kind of valuable role of making sure that we can pay developers to keep working on it. We run things like Meridian, this conference that's coming up next week. this online conference, so people can learn more about Stellar, get more involved about Stellar, like meet other people building on Stellar, because it is this whole ecosystem that needs to foster. So it basically does three things. It maintains the code and make sure that is like that keeps going. We like kind of foster the ecosystem where we like bring other companies together and introduce them and make sure that people are working together and following kind of the standards of the ecosystem. And we do a lot of like policy regulatory stuff to make sure that there's like a good view on the network, right? So because regulators are, they're still trying to learn and figure out what crypto is all about, and trying to understand the approach. So the more we can kind of talk to them and help them understand what we're doing, what they should be worried about, what they shouldn't be worried about, that kind of thing, the better. So that's kind of the purpose of SDF.
And is the goal, I mean, projects like Stellar and Ripple and, well, so many crypto projects really, they talk about, trying to build this new, fairer financial system that is, permissionless and open to everyone in the world, particularly people in, countries where the financial infrastructure is not necessarily sufficiently built out to meet their needs. Is that still the goal? And how do we keep working on that? Is it supposed to just kind of, eventually take shape through networks? And, if we build the networks, the people will come. It's a hard thing to do, right? Is this like a multi-decade project, or do you see that there's a tipping point coming, and you're sort of, in the meantime, working with regulators and the kind of, the Wall Street financial system? How does it all join up, I guess, Jed?
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a hard problem. I mean, the thing is, payments has really strong network effects, and that really works against you in the beginning, because if you have some payment system and no one is on it, then it's just useless, right? There's no reason for it. So I think this is a big reason why crypto has kind of been slow to be adopted in the real world. It's not just a Stellar issue. It's like crypto in general. It always depends on network effects, and it's because you have to cross this kind of threshold of people having the system and like wanting to use the system before it becomes useful. The upside of that is, like, once you can cross that threshold, like once you get a certain amount of activity, then it should grow really, really rapidly, because it is like this permissionless network that's can grow organically, and like everyone can build on it, and like as people are on it, it becomes more and more compelling. So our challenge has just been how to get this like first like beachhead, this first kernel of activity, and I am pretty hopeful. I think the approach we're taking now is I'm pretty excited about. I think it has like a lot of potential. Like, basically, for instance, again, like with this Vibrant wallet, one of the reasons why we're excited about it is because it's essentially single player, right? Like, it's dollar savings, which is useful even if nobody else is using the product, right? Like, if you yourself just find this thing, you're like, oh, cool, I can convert my pesos into dollars, and it doesn't matter if anyone else in the world is using it. And so this allows you to build a pretty big user base before you're with kind of ignoring network effects, right? And then once you have enough people kind of using it this way, then they can start using it peer-to-peer, like sort of like PayPal or Venmo, and then they can kind of use it globally to send remittances, and this will kind of give you the kernel that you need to like build this network of people that are using it for payments. And once people start using it for payments and you have enough people, that can kind of snowball, right? And so that's kind of Stellar's path. And what I think it's going to take something like that. Like, maybe it's not Vibrant, but it'll take something where it's useful for people just by themselves, without other people in the network. And then once you have that, you can kind of transition to this mode where it's like multiplayer, and it's useful because of network effects.
Yes, indeed. It really is all about network effects. And I think, probably to your credit, Jed, you and the Stella team have been, you've been fairly active in this space in terms of trying to get, Stella out to the people and doing. So I'm thinking of initiatives like, the Coinbase Earn program. So they, I think, worked quite closely with you to effectively airdrop Stella out to people, and I know you've done some other airdrops, and you've done some token burns. So maybe just talk through some of those initiatives and how successful you think they've been.
Yeah, so I mean, let's see. When we started, Stellar launched, I think, in like 2014 or 15, and we started with kind of a pretty large airdrop to people, and it was the first time that was, I think the first time that was done on a big scale by crypto things, and it worked really well. Like it definitely worked really well at first. We got lots of people interested in the project, and lots of people started building things, and it generated a ton of momentum. At some point it starts getting, because you're giving away money on the internet, so people like really try to find ways to exploit it, and at some point it starts, the quality of people that you're giving away money to kind of degrades. Like a lot of people try to start to scam it and things like that. So eventually we had to deposit, and we're kind of waiting for other methods. And the Coinbase one also worked really well because, Coinbase did a great job of like educating people about what Stellar was about, what lumens are, and like why this is useful in the world. And so that one also worked really well. I think to do these things successfully, I think you need to educate people on what the token is, and you also need stuff for people to do with it right when they get it, which was one of our early mistakes before, is there just wasn't enough stuff for people to do once they got the lumens. So yeah, it's sort of a mixed bag, and I think in this day and age, it's a little bit tough to do just because there's been so many airdrops by so many different coins and things like that. So people are a little bit fatigued by it. So I don't think we definitely don't have any plans for doing one in the future now. I mean, that could change, but it's probably not on our roadmap anymore. But I think early on it was a good strategy, and something like that could be useful in the future if you were just very thoughtful and like put a lot of time into it. But there's some other ways that we're thinking will be a little more impactful now. So.
Sure. Okay. And I understand that you guys have, or Stella, you're holding the annual conference. It's actually next week. It's called the Meridian Conference, I think. So, yeah, let's. What's the goal with this conference? What's happening?
Yeah, so I mean, we had our last one in person. Obviously this year it's hard to do an in-person conference, so it's all virtual, but it should still be pretty high quality. We're hoping. I mean, there's some great speakers. Tim Berners-Lee, the inventor of the internet, basically, is there. Reid Hoffman is also there, LinkedIn and PayPal and a lot of other things. So they're both speaking, and there's a bunch of other great speakers. A lot of people from the ecosystem will be talking. So I don't know, we're pretty excited about it. It should be fun. I mean, it's the whole week next week. Yeah, Monday through Friday. So yeah, tune in, meridian.stellar.org if you're interested in listening to in. So.
Yeah, and so what's the idea there? Can anyone just go along to the website meridian.stellar.org and they can register to see, as you say, that it's quite a good speaker lineup when you look through it.
Yeah, it's free. Anyone and yeah, everyone can sign up. So yeah, just go there, register, sign up for the things that you want to watch, and yeah, it should be a good time.
Well, I'll make sure that there's a link to the Stella Meridian Conference in the show notes. Look, just before we go to a quick break, and then we'll come back and we'll finish off with the crypto conversation hot take round. Just closing thoughts on Stella and why people should get involved with your vision.
Stellar, in some ways, it's a little less like shiny and exciting than a lot of other crypto projects in the space right now. I mean, we're trying to do something which is essentially really basic, which is just, connect all these different financial institutions and currencies, and make all of this stuff interoperable. I mean, it sounds pretty basic, but so does the internet when you kind of explain it. You're just connecting information and networks of information to each other, and the hope is that allowing this like kind of simple thing, but allowing it to be done in this frictionless way that's easy and fundamental, will allow people to build all these like interesting things upon it, right? And so I think the novelty and like the coolness that Stellar will kind of will enable for the world is going to come after the network is in place, where it'll just allow people to build all kinds of cool like things when you can send like 10 cents from here to Vietnam with no problem, right? So like that's when all the innovation will happen, and it'll be pretty exciting. But so Stellar is kind of like this fundamental plumbing that needs to exist before you can have all this kind of cool, like more exciting things built on top of it.
Absolutely. Well, I'm sure you and the team will keep building. Jed, let's go to a very quick break, and then we'll come back and finish off with the crypto conversation hot take round.
Whether you're an enterprise fund manager or a retail trader, buying and selling cryptocurrencies successfully requires price discovery you can rely on. Brave New Coin's liquid indices provide trusted US dollar prices for Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Ripple. Featuring end-of-day or intraday outputs, you can count on the BLX, ELX, and XRPLX for accurate US dollar pricing for smart contract oracles, settlement price discovery, net asset valuation, and performance analysis. Visit bravenewcoin.com to find out more.
All right, we're back, and I'm with Jed McCaleb. Jed is the co-founder and chief architect of the Stella Development Foundation. And Jed, look, I like to finish each podcast with a quick round of rapid-fire crypto conversation hot takes. Are you up for it?
Sure, yeah, let's do it.
All right, just want your hot takes, your hot fire, take your best shot. Here we go. Should be interesting. Jed, where do you sit on the Bitcoin maximalist to multi-coin opportunist spectrum?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, I'm not a Bitcoin maximalist. I think Bitcoin definitely has a place, and I think it'll continue to exist for decades and decades. But I think there's a lot of other niches and a lot of things that blockchain can do that are not solved by Bitcoin, and so it's going to take other technologies as well.
Yes, I agree with that. And just while we're talking Bitcoin, just briefly, I do remember you saying on another podcast that you'd be very surprised if Bitcoin wasn't around in another 100 years' time, which is, encouraging to hear. So I guess on that, do you see any other blockchain ever kind of competing with what, Bitcoin's, let's say, store of value or digital gold or, just big, clunky, highly secure, high-value payments? Does anyone else compete with that, or is that Bitcoin's use case to lose at this point?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe eventually someone will develop something that is like that, but somewhat better than Bitcoin by some way. But it's hard to imagine. It's just got so much momentum behind it now, and it works. So it's hard to imagine that being replaced, right? So yeah. So I don't know. I still stand by that. I would be surprised if Bitcoin didn't exist in 100 years. So
very nice. Okay, well, Jed, what would you say is your firmest conviction crypto opinion?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably not very controversial, but I think my firmest conviction is just that it's just still very early here, and a lot of this stuff won't be around in like 10 years, and it's just, we just don't know what's going to happen yet, and we still need adoption. I guess that's my firmest conviction, is that we still need real people to use these things.
Absolutely. All right, let's change tack just slightly, Jed. UBI as a potential fix for AI-induced automation, and also, as a potential fix for, let's just say, inequality. What's your take on UBI?
Yeah, I'm pretty pro UBI or something like negative income tax or something along those lines. I'm actually donating to this UBI study that they're about to do. That's going to be like a multi-year study to kind of show the effects of it. There was an initial study by Y Combinator that was pretty promising that they did I think last year. And this is like an extension of that with more people and for a longer period of time. So I do think with automation is only going to increase, and I think that obviously the capital is just kind of accumulating more of the GDP essentially of the US and other developed countries, and that trend is only going to continue, I think. And so we have to do something, otherwise basically we'll have this Elysium situation where there's this set of people that have all the money and everyone else has nothing. So so UBI seems like a good solution to me.
Very nice, Jed. Okay. Well, look, Bill Gates famously said that we tend to overestimate what we can accomplish in 2 years and underestimate what we can accomplish in 10. What does, whatever you like here, Jed, what does blockchain look like, or Bitcoin, crypto, or the Stella ecosystem, whatever, AI even, what does it look like in 10 years' time?
10 years. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, I think in 10 years' time, I think that there will be, this stuff will be widely used. I think we'll finally have crossed the chasm where we're already kind of seeing it, where banks are now holding Bitcoin and things like that. So I think it'll actually be used day to day in payments, and most payments you send internationally will go over either Stella or some other blockchain based system. A lot of countries will have issued some CBDC or something like that. So I think in 10 years, yeah, things will be pretty far along at that point.
I completely agree. Okay, well, Jed, sci-fi author William Gibson said, it's a famous quote that you'll be very familiar with. He said that the future is already here, it's just not evenly distributed. But can you think of an example of the future being here right now, but most people just aren't really aware of it?
Yeah, I mean, I think probably there's like advances in AI that people really haven't like figured out that what applications there'll be out there in the world. Like if you just look at like how powerful GPT-3 is, which was done by OpenAI recently, people really haven't wrapped their minds around how to use that, and a lot of products haven't been developed using it yet. But I mean, once that happens, I think it'll be pretty powerful. So yeah, I think AI is probably the largest one that isn't out there yet. So.
And just on AI, and I guess the reason I bring this up again is just I think you have a lot of tech people do have an interest in AI and follow along. And I know you've donated in the past to the Machine Intelligence Research Institute, right? And I think you're on the board there. So maybe just what's happening with the AI, and are you sort of an AI bull, or do you have like Elon Musk style worries about AI? Where are you with AI?
I would say both. I think AI is sort of inevitable. I think also not only is it inevitable, I think if it doesn't happen, I think humans are in pretty bad shape. I think we're just not rational enough or smart enough to really handle the technology that we're developing. And so unless we get smarter through AI, then I think it'll have really bad consequences. I do think it's like extremely risky to like I agree with Elon that the chance of us creating something smarter than ourselves and having that go well is pretty low, but I just don't see another route. I think it just has to be done, and we just have to be careful about it. And hopefully as we get closer, that the chance will seem higher.
Yes, indeed. And look, I guess this question is sort of related, but time to get a little bit weirder, Jed. So let's zoom out for a second. And what do you see as the long-term future for the human race then? Do you see a dystopia or utopia?
I mean, I'm always a very optimistic person, so I'm always going to definitely be striving for the utopia. And I think people in general are very, they're clever, right? They are ingenious and they'll figure stuff out. So even though things kind of look dire, once the problems kind of manifest themselves, then they figure things out. So I'm pretty positive about the whole thing, but
it's just sort of, because humans, we're such messy biological creatures, driven by these weird biological urges. So it feels like it's just, can we embrace our rational side and use technology for good, or can we not, right?
Yeah. I mean, I do think that the next 10, 20 years is going to be extremely exciting and weird. I just think there's a lot of stuff kind of coming together now that's going to make, technological progress is just the rate of it is just increasing. So it's just things are going to move faster, and there's going to be a lot of change over the next 10, 20 years.
Yes, indeed. All right, let's close this out, Jed. Finally, what is your favorite science fiction book, film, show, or universe?
Definitely Dune is my favorite sci-fi book. Nice. I think the one that's scared me the most, I think, is Three Body Problem.
Yes.
That actually made me think differently about I don't know, the universe, I guess. But Dune's definitely the best. So.
Yes, two superb selections there, and you're not the first to go with the Three Body Problem. That's a classic piece of sci-fi and a real head scratcher, and might put a link to that in the show notes so people can follow up, because that is a great piece of sci-fi.
Yeah. I mean, once you learn about, or once you understand about this dark forest thing, it's pretty scary.
Yes, indeed. All right. Well, hey, look, this has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for talking to me today, Jed. Nothing else to say really, except to hand the microphone back to you. And look, tell the people where they can go if they want to find out more about Stella, perhaps engage with the Stella Meridian Conference next week, and find you and follow you on your various platforms.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Andy. Yeah, so Stella.org has tons of info about Stella, obviously. We also have, on Reddit, r/Stella is where a lot of discussion happens. I'm on Twitter. I never really tweet, so it would be a boring follow, but at Jed McCaleb on Twitter. And then Meridian's next week, meridian.stellar.org. Check it out. It'll be cool.
All right. Hey, thank you, Jed. All the best.
All right. Thanks. Bye.